This program has been made possible in part by
I'd like to welcome Laura Bryant and Barry Klein. Now, you know them as designers. They have wonderful lines of yarn, but you are authors also. And we want to welcome you.
Thanks,
and what
Shay.
are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to talk about fit, the way things fit on a body, and making sure that what you're doing is selecting the right size. You know, in years past, everyone says, I'm a medium, I'm a large. They're a letter,
Right.
but we're not really letters, we're measurements. And so we're going to deal with actual measurements.
Okay.
And more importantly than the measurements themselves, or hand in hand with the measurements themselves, is the amount of ease for a particular garment that you need to have to make it fit properly.
Laura, stop and tell what you mean by ease.
By ease. Well, your measurement is a set number.
Okay.
And something that is a garment that is exactly that number has no ease.
Okay.
It's not larger and it's not smaller. You can have positive ease, which means that a garment gets larger than your numbers, or negative ease, which means that the garment is actually a little bit smaller and stretches to fit. And we've got some examples of all of those things. But before we do that, we're going to show you how to take precisely some very important numbers.
Okay. How do we start?
We're going to start with you and my bust.
Well, that's a nice invitation. I'm going to measure you.
You are.
Correct? So I'll put my arm around you. And I have to make sure.
You want to
now
go
you tell me
around-
if I'm correct, Barry.
Right, you're doing it great. You want to go
Okay.
around the fullest part of the bust.
Okay.
You want to make sure that it doesn't drop.
All right.
And then you also want to look around the back and make sure that it's going straight around the back side as well.
Okay.
So sometimes it takes more than one person. You never want to measure yourself because you become concave.
Oh,
So always
right.
do this with a friend. You measure them, they measure you.
Okay.
Makes it easy.
Okay.
Okay.
So then my next measurement is her hip. Now my question before was, do you come down a certain from your waist, or how do you measure your hips?
There's not a set distance. What you want to look at is you're going to get to know somebody really well.
Okay.
You want to look at their body. And so you're checking for tummy. You want to see if there's a little pooch in front or if they've got a hip.
Okay.
And what we're going to look at by writing down these measurements is the difference between the bust and the hip. In
Okay.
case you're making something longer, you have to make sure that it fits in all the right spots.
And my hip was, I think, 3
It
inches
is, yes.
bigger than
We
my
did
bust.
that prior to that. And I'm going to give you this, Barry, because you're going to do the next measurements that are
Perfect.
very precise.
Yeah,
correct?
there's a couple measurements that are a little
Okay.
more difficult to take.
All right.
And it's really important. It's a shoulder measurement. And in past, we just went shoulder bone to shoulder bone.
Okay.
Now what we're looking for is the inside. And so you don't have to stick your hands in anyone's underarms. We say take a set of straight knitting needles,
That's nice.
put them in,
Yes.
look at them sideways, and make sure that they're going straight.
Okay.
And also, it's a good chance to give somebody you care about a nice little shoulder massage so that they're really relaxed.
Yes.
You then take the tape measure, and you're going to go from the top of the knitting needle across to the
Okay.
top of the knitting needle. And we've got a measurement of about 13 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
If we do it the old way, which was shoulder bone to shoulder bone, we've got 16.
Ah.
So there's such a difference that by the time you attach a sleeve,
Yes.
nothing fits.
Yes.
It gives you extra fabric, and your sleeve drops down.
I just made a sweater like that.
So it's-
that's why.
This
That's
will
why.
give you a more fit
Okay.
measurement. And then the other measurement that's important is armhole. And an armhole is the depth between the shoulder bone down to the underarm.
Okay.
And you're just going to take your tape measure, you put it right up on the shoulder where the shoulder
Uh-huh.
bone is, and you measure straight down to the top of the needle. And again, make sure that the needle is going straight in the underarm.
Yeah.
And we've got an armhole measurement of about 7 inches.
Okay. And now
Another-
you're writing all this down when you're at home, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you're not remembering all these.
Right, there's a diagram that we use
Oh,
in the book that's just got lines for everything. You're going to take a lot of measurements, but these we feel are the most important ones. Another one that's really important is back of neck.
Uh-huh.
Now, Laura's got short hair, so I could easily take a tape measure and measure.
Sure.
For anyone who has longer hair, if you take a pair of knitting needles and you put them against your ears, don't push them flush.
Okay.
And make sure that they're not pointed in. They have to be
Okay.
perfectly straight. You do the same thing like we did for shoulders. You take the tape measure and you measure
That's your
top of
neck.
needle to top of needle. And we've got a back neck measurement of about 6 3/4 to 7 inches.
That is really clever.
Okay, so it's just little tricks to make
Yes.
sure that you've got the right numbers.
Now, the important thing about ease is that different garments require different amounts of ease.
Okay.
So we're going to start with this cardigan.
It looks straight to me down.
It is straight
it?
down. And when you
Okay.
look at it, that is that is my hip measurement.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like on me. So this cardigan,
So this is your hip measurement at bust and hip.
right, so it's bigger than my bust
Yes.
and exactly what my hip is.
Yes.
It's meant to be worn without being buttoned.
Uh-huh.
So while you can see that in fact, if we pull it tight, it does fit my
Yes.
bust,
Uh-huh.
when worn open, it looks a little skimpy.
Yeah. It
It's-
doesn't
it's
look
not,
like it's big
right,
enough.
it doesn't look
You want
like
to
it
make sure
fits
that
me.
it doesn't cup around the bust, that it
Yeah.
covers enough of it and will stay that way.
And in fact, it's
You'd
cutting.
really want it about here,
Yes,
correct?
it's cutting exactly in the wrong place.
Yes. Okay. That's very interesting, and I would not have guessed that if I were home.
No, most of us don't know that.
Uh-huh.
Now here's another cardigan, and this one is actually thinner. This has almost negative ease. It's an inch smaller than my bust measurement. However, in this jacket, look at the amount of overlap there is in the front. In other words, how much larger the fronts are.
Now, if I were home and knitting this, I think I did it wrong.
You would think that you did it wrong.
Yes,
The
because
note in the
there's so
pattern
much.
says that the fronts are larger to accommodate drape and proper fit.
That-
So now look at how this one fits on me. It does have a one-button closure here. However, it could
fits.
easily be worn without the button,
Yes.
and now it doesn't look skimpy. It looks correct.
Yes.
And you can see where it comes to on the bust. It closes up more so that
Yes.
it sits on the bust instead of cupping around.
Well, and when it was laying on the table, I thought it looked too big for you.
And it's not.
Yes.
It's just exactly right.
Right.
And we helped that by putting a little taper at the side.
Uh-huh.
So where it is my bust measurement, it does get a little bit bigger at the bottom to accommodate the hips.
Yes.
Now here are two little pullovers. They are exactly the same sweater, rendered in two different gauge yarns. The first one is far less than my bust measurement. So this is going to have negative ease. The second one is just a hair bigger than my bust measurement. And it is a much bulkier yarn. Now, this one, with its negative ease, fits me just exactly right.
Right.
Looks good.
You look good in anything, Laura.
No, this one doesn't look so good.
Oh, this is.
You'll see, this one doesn't look so good, and this is really.
Oh, yeah,
it
it's
looks
too
bulky.
big for you.
It-
Yeah, it
it-
does.
and
You
it
can see
makes
how much
me
it stands
look
away.
Look big. It
Yes.
makes me look big.
Yes. Well, thanks, guys. This has been great.